Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Good Boxing Podcast with your host, Josh Saez. Today, as always, I have a hot episode for you. Today, evidently, Mike Tyson says he wants to fight Tyson Fury in an exhibition. Crazy. So, Mike Tyson just recently on his Hot Boxing podcast and throughout various media pundits basically said he has three fights he has in store, two this year, and then one down the line. The first exhibition is the one I had mentioned before in my previous episode, where Mike Tyson calls out Evander Holyfield and essentially verifies that there were talks for a fight between Holyfield and Mike Tyson. Now, nostalgia, nostalgia, nostalgia. If you really look at everything nowadays, everything's either repackaged, it's some sort of play on a nostalgic time in everyone's life. We all are suckers for nostalgia. We think about our childhood. I think about the 90s, the 2000s. You think about Mike Tyson in boxing. You think about other fighters. For me, it was Miguel Cotto, Felix Trinidad. When I was young, these were the first fights that I saw and really, really made me fall in love with boxing. So when Miguel Cotto talks about fighting Juan Manuel Marquez, hey, man, you retired. You gave so many years to the sport. You gave honestly some of the best fights and best memories of boxing in my lifetime, right? For me personally. So why not? Right? You look at Godzilla versus King Kong. Everyone remembers those movies from being young, but now they're re-releasing it. And again, playing on nostalgia. So I have no problem with Mike Tyson trying to fight Evander Holyfield in a third trilogy fight, even though this is going to be an exhibition. They have to sell it like there's bad blood, and it's an exciting fight. You know, fight night comes. It may not be Triller, and it may be Tyson's Legends Only League. Whoever's going to promote this promotion and this fight, you're going to get a good fight, right? We all want to see Mike Tyson versus Holyfield, and don't lie and say you're not going to watch the fight. Truthfully, everyone's going to watch that fight. But the other two names are very, very surprising, in my opinion. I didn't expect Tyson to say that he would want to fight Lennox Lewis. When you look back at that fight, everyone remembers that build up where they're at the press conference, they get into a fight. Mike Tyson says he wants to eat his children, Lennox Lewis, right? And then a brawl ensues, and it was just pandemonium. That fight, everyone wanted to see Tyson versus Lennox Lewis. It didn't live up to the hype. Tyson looked good for a round or two, and then Lennox Lewis, being Lennox Lewis, he used that remarkable jab, kept Tyson at bay, didn't get bothered by the angles, and then eventually he stopped Tyson. So it was a very, very good fight, but it was a punctuation mark on the end of Mike Tyson's career. Sure, Tyson went on to go fight, but he would never fight at the prolific level and high profile level again after that fight. That was his biggest payday and biggest fight to date. So moving forward, I think the Lennox Lewis fight is another fight, again, playing on nostalgia. It was one of the biggest fights of the 2000s. And quite frankly, to me, it lived up to the hype. You saw two guys that legitimately were talking trash to one another. It was a fight that happened too late. And in boxing, as you know, fights marinate, marinate, marinate. And then at the end, the fight either doesn't live up to the expectation or the hype, or it does, and we get classics. I mean, people talk, people talk, people talk, but when the best fight the best, we get the best fights. I mean, you look at history where you had the best fighting the best. Everyone knows the 80s, everyone talks about it, and it's almost at nauseum at this point, but it was such a golden age because it's such a rarity where the best fight the best. But Tyson, Lennox Lewis, Tyson, Holyfield, I think all really, really fun fights, fun exhibitions. And you know what? These guys have given so much and done so much for the sport. They are in the twilight of their career. And I think there's nothing wrong with benefiting off of that. If movies can be repackaged, why not relive the glory days of some old fights? I mean, they're not going to be the same caliber and the same stakes of the old and previous fights, but they're certainly fun. I mean, that's the point of an exhibition. Even if it's not this massive box office pay per view event, even if they make a nice chunk of change, they deserve it. I mean, Mike Tyson, people still talk about him being one of the greatest. Um, if you think he's one of the best heavyweights of all time, You may be looking at things with rose tinted glasses, but arguably, when you look at his potentiality, if you look at his potential and what he could do, arguably you could say he had a lot of raw talent, but every time he stepped up, he seemed to fall short. I don't agree with Teddy Atlas when he gives scathing reviews of Tyson, always saying like, "Oh, every time he never won a fight." That's crazy. I mean, Teddy says things for shock value, and I respect Teddy Atlas because he's a phenomenal trainer. He's done it at the highest level, and I do have adoration for Teddy Atlas. But when he says Mike Tyson's never won a real fight in his life, that is just an amazing soundbite, right? So when you look at it, sure, let the fight happen. I could totally see it being possible. But the fight I did not expect Mike Tyson to say was an exhibition with Tyson Fury. Kind of threw me for a loop, and I didn't expect it, but I'm all for it. I mean, you got Tyson, who's literally Mike Tyson, and then you got someone who's literally named after Mike Tyson's Fury. I mean, the current and probably at the time they fight, Tyson Fury is going to be undisputed champion. Why not let Iron Mike go up against a future Hall of Famer as well? You got someone who's current. It'll be a fun fight. I don't think they'll go all out, of course, because Mike Tyson and Tyson Fury clearly have adoration for one another. Mike Tyson really respects Tyson Fury, and he's actually holding Fury over Anthony Joshua in that fight. So let me know your thoughts. I just wanted to kind of let you guys know more or less what's going to be happening with Mike Tyson. And I think it's kind of a bombshell to kind of say this stuff because Mike Tyson is bringing more eyeballs to the sport. He does want to see the best fight the best. His Hot Boxing podcast has a prolific lineup of guests. He constantly um, just brings attention to certain issues in boxing. And I think it's a really, really good segue between the casual and the hardcore. I think he's really uniting a lot of people with his podcast. And with these events, I think we're going to kind of bridge the gap between the old generation and the new generation because we could all appreciate these fights. A lot of people never really saw Mike Tyson in his prime fight. So watching Mike Tyson fight Roy Jones or these other guys will be a very educational experience for people that do not or did not follow the sport. Think about it. All the views are going to go up on the old fights. People are going to try to remain abreast with what happened in the past. And if you learn more about boxing history, you're going to learn to love the sport a lot more. And then you could also see the parallels of where things kind of stay the same and where things are changing. So I think these exhibition fights are fantastic. And let me know. Follow the podcast on Instagram at Good Boxing Podcast. If you're not following me on YouTube, the YouTube channel has video podcasts live. I try to upload the YouTube videos first, and then I'm able to edit the audio and whatnot. So if, as an incentive, check out the YouTube channel. It's more often not going to get the podcast a little early, but I'm going to try to synchronize everything. If you want to watch it on IGTV, that's really, really fantastic as well. The support has been phenomenal, and I'm really quite shocked at the streams. It's really been a surreal experience, and thank you for taking your time out of your day to listen to the podcast and just kind of hear what I have to say about certain topics. Feel free to leave feedback. Feel free to write scathing reviews. If you don't agree with me, comment, like, whatever. Doesn't matter. I love having discourse and dialogue as long as it's respectful and it's not the generic, oh, I do this, I could beat you or whatever kind of stuff. Because honestly, I want to hear why you feel you have an opinion. There's nothing wrong with having an opinion. I just want you to actually support and substantiate your opinion. Come up with examples. You may not agree with me. I personally love that. I love if you can elucidate another side to me. So feel free to write. I love it. You guys have been fantastic and have a very good day.